everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk Physical Media. I'm your host, John, and this is the weekly show where we talk all things movies and everything in the world of physical media. And we like to start every week's show off with the news, and this week we got Arrow Video's Spooky Season October 2024 announcements, and it was a little better than what Criterion announced for October. I would say that this spooky season, though, it's looking a little bit slower than in years past. We're not really getting any big franchise releases like a lot of people were hoping for. We are getting a Nightmare on Elm Street, though, from Warner Brothers, and they announced their artwork for the 4K with the slipcover and the steelbook. And if I'm being honest, and I see a lot of people have the same complaints on me on the artist formerly known as Twitter, and that is, the artwork for this is not the greatest, whether it be for the slipcover or the steelbook. I personally prefer the slipcover, but that isn't like what I think of when I think of a Nightmare on Elm Street. It's very similar to like how The Exorcist last year. Not as bad as The Exorcist. My God, no. Absolutely not as bad as the US release of The Exorcist when it comes to the slipcover artwork. But this is more like what you would see on the entire franchise 4K release, and not what I expect on the original one, this picture of Freddy Krueger. So I would have preferred them just to use the original movie poster. The Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is very known for their movie posters. They're some of the most iconic movie posters. They all follow a similar design. They're absolutely beautiful, and you have one of the most iconic movie posters right there ready to go, and you choose to go with some alternate art, and it feels lazy. And Warner Brothers has been doing this a lot. You see it a lot when it comes to their steelbooks or their slipcovers. They try and use this alternate artwork, and everybody almost complains about it. And the thing is you have the original artwork. Just use it on the slipcover. I mean, Kino Lorber always does that, and nobody ever complains about it. And when you have such an iconic movie poster, very similar to last year again with The Exorcist, you use the artwork that is there for you to use. I mean, it just seems very simple, but either way, or we don't really care necessarily about the artwork, so it's not really a huge deal. We're really there to see if the disc, is good, and I expect the disc to be pretty good. Warner Brothers usually has pretty damn good releases. I don't think we have the specs yet out on what this 4K Blu-ray release is going to be, but either way, I'm really anticipating it. So as long as that disc is good, I won't be unhappy. Obviously, I would have liked the entire franchise released on 4K Blu-ray, but still, A Nightmare on Elm Street is one of my all-time favorite horror movies. I'll be picking this up day one. I would have liked better artwork on it, but it's not something that's going to make or break for me. I just really wish you would have got better artwork, especially when you have that iconic movie poster. But back to what Arrow Video is going to be releasing in October, Spooky Season. The big one for me, and probably the only one I'll be picking up, and that is Trick or Treat. I actually have this old Blu-ray for that, but Scream Factory put out their own Blu-ray, so somehow Arrow Video ended up with the rights to Trick or Treat, which is a classic anthology horror film that flew under the radar, but now has a pretty big cult following, and is actually one of my favorite anthology films of all time because it has a nice through line. And this will have an Arrow Video Store exclusive. I'm definitely going to be picking this one up. This will probably be the only thing in here I definitely grab. And then the other big announcements I would have to say is the two Exorcist movies. Now, they announced The Exorcist 3 on 4K Blu-ray. That's a UK only release because The Exorcist 3 did come out on 4K Blu-ray already here in the United States last year from Scream Factory, so I imagine it'll probably be the same scan, have probably the same extras, but now the United Kingdom and everybody in Region B can finally get their hands on this without having to pay import fees, which is always a good thing, so I'm really glad that those people will finally be able to get The Exorcist 3, but unfortunately, you're also going to have access to The Exorcist 2, The Heretic, which is one of the worst movies that I personally have ever seen, and later in this video, I'm actually going to give you guys my top 10 worst movies of all time. A very opinionated question, but I think a lot of people agree with me. The Exorcist 2 is one of the worst movies ever because it just commits the ultimate movie sin. It's fucking boring. I mean, that's just it. This is the movie that puts you to sleep. I'm telling you, if you have insomnia and you can't sleep, throw on The Exorcist 2. So maybe if you do have insomnia, grab this 4K Blu-ray in Region B, because I believe it's not a US title release. I personally, I don't want it. So if that ever gets a US release with a beautiful 4K Blu-ray, it will not go near my collection because I just hate that movie. The Exorcist 3, though, if you guys don't have it, fantastic movie and is the true sequel to the original Exorcist, and it's just a great movie on its own. And then we're getting the Hellraiser Quartet of Terror, or Quartet of Torture, I'm sorry. This was released last year. This was a Region B release on 4K Blu-ray. I didn't pick it up last year when it was released then, so now the US and Canada, we can get our hands on this, and I'll probably pick this up. I'm not the biggest Hellraiser fan in the world. I only really like Hellraiser 1 and 2, and this includes 3 and 4, but maybe now I'll finally grab it and maybe I'll appreciate those movies a little bit more on 4K Blu-ray. I have them on Blu-ray, but again, I only really like Hellraiser 1 and 2, and those are really like the ultimate ones, but there are people who are just huge fans of the entire franchise. I'm not that guy, but I still might grab these on 4K Blu-ray because, And then there's this big J-horror collection coming out. If you're a fan of J-horror movies, I only like a few of them, and obviously the ones that came over here to the United States that got remade, like The Ring. The Ring is one of my favorite horror movies of all time, but that is a remake of Ringu, a classic J-horror film. So if you're a J-horror fan, you're definitely getting spoiled with this nice collection that's coming out. It's not my cup of tea, so it's not something that I'll be grabbing, but if you're a fan of J-horror, this is definitely for you. So let me know, what do you guys think of Arrow Video's spooky season's announcements? How do you guys feel about spooky season so far? It's a little slower this year, in my opinion. I don't think it's as good as years past, but still, we're getting a lot on 4K Blu-ray, and I can always appreciate that. I mean, Trick or Treat is definitely one I want to grab, so I'll be grabbing that, and everything else is kind of up in the air. I will definitely not be getting The Exorcist 2, I can tell you that. But another thing that, it's not officially announced, but it's pretty much confirmed, and that is Ghost is going to be coming to 4K Blu-ray.
Ghost.
Probably from Paramount, I imagine so, because they released this previous Paramount Presents Blu-ray that I have right here. So if you kind of go with the pattern of what Paramount is doing, I imagine this will just be a standard 4K Blu-ray release, much like Trading Places, which had a Paramount Presents release, and then when it came to 4K Blu-ray, it came to us just courtesy of Paramount. And Ghost is actually one of my favorite 1990s films. I love this movie. I saw it at way too young of an age, and for a long time throughout my childhood, I associated what happens to you after you die from the movie Ghost, which is not based on any fact at all, but because I saw this movie when I was in kindergarten, a young 5-year-old's mind probably shouldn't be exposed to death like that at a very young age. But the movie's damn good. Whoopi Goldberg won an Academy Award for it. It's definitely her best performance. The Swayze Express is in it. Always love Patrick Swayze. This is another one of his best performances. Demi Moore is great in this movie. Her haircut's not, but she's still fantastic in this movie. Either way, I'm really looking forward to Ghost coming to us on 4K Blu-ray. And speaking of Paramount, there was speculation last week and there was rumors and it kind of confirmed, but I never got any sort of press release, so that a lot of the Kevin Smith movies are being worked on for 4K Blu-ray from Paramount, like the original Clerks, Chasing Amy, and I think I saw Jersey Girl. Now, I have all these movies on Blu-ray already, so that would make sense. Those are the easiest ones to gain access for one of the Kevin Smith movies. A lot of those come in a triple pack, along with like Jay and Silent Bob if you swap out Jersey Girl. Jersey Girl for a long time was considered a very bad movie. I think it's pretty good. It's not one of Kevin Smith's best, but it's a pretty good movie. We're also supposedly, and this is still a rumor, that Paramount bought the rights from Harvey Weinstein or his estate or whoever you buy from because he's in prison, bought the rights to Dogma, and we'll finally be getting Dogma on 4K Blu-ray, or at least on Blu-ray again, but I'm sure it'll be on 4K Blu-ray because that Blu-ray is ridiculously expensive and you can't watch Dogma anywhere, and that kills me because I love Kevin Smith. And my favorite Kevin Smith movie is Dogma. I know that's not a lot of people's favorite. I mean, Clerks it's a classic as well. And yeah, Kevin Smith's got a new movie coming out this year, and I can't wait to check it out. So let's hope that Dogma is finally coming to us on 4K Blu-ray. And that's all the news I got this week for you guys. A lot of good announcements. Let me know what you guys think of all these announcements, what you guys think of the packaging for A Nightmare on Elm Street in the comments section below. And without further ado, let's get into the Q&A portion of this week's show. And our first question this week is from 444 Chroma. Have you seen what Universal did or trying to use AI to enhance detail/sharpness on Jaws 3? This might be a can of worms. What do you think? My 2 cents? It's terrible. If the source material is poor, then that's just how it is. I'd rather be given whatever exists or the true information, even if it's a faint scan. If you feel unsure about this issue, that's okay. I won't be offended if you skip my question. And no, I'm not going to skip that question, buddy. And actually, I touched on this in the Jaws 3 review, and if you see my Jaws 3 4K Blu-ray review, I said that, you know what? It's hard to argue with the results, and that's kind of as my job as the critic, as the person reviewing that 4K Blu-ray. I kind of just have to look at the results for what they are, and I can't deny that Jaws 3 is one of the biggest jumps from Blu-ray to 4K Blu-ray. Now, my understanding with Jaws 3, and the thing is that they didn't use it for Jaws the Revenge, so that means that, maybe they just felt like this was the cheapest and best way to actually fix Jaws 3, because from what I'm understanding, and I got conflicting reports, is that with Jaws 3 on 4K Blu-ray, they kind of used the AI because the original camera negative, it had two camera negatives, or they overlaid a different camera negative to get the 3D effects, but either way, or it kind of messed up the negative itself, and that's why it always had that soft, very, very flat looking, in my opinion, and also very grainy picture that it was just an ugly looking movie forever. And I get what you're saying in the sense that if that's how it is, then that's how it is. I don't want artificial intelligence to fix it. And that's where it really gets tough, because I agree with you. It does open up a can of worms, artificial intelligence. Do you want to go that route? Because once you go that route, you can't turn around. That's the thing with technology. I mean, we can stop it, but we live in a capitalist society where, somebody's always trying to get ahead, and if money's just sitting there at the end of the tunnel, unfortunately, if AI is a tool without some sort of law preventing people from using it, then it's gonna be used, and I guess we just kind of have to accept it into our society. And believe me, I don't want it, because I feel like that's just going to take jobs away from human beings. And once we kind of go down that path, that's it. We're going down that path. But at least Universal kind of used some restraint with this one. They only used it on Jaws 3. Like I said in my review, it's not like Jaws 3 and Jaws the Revenge are beloved films. They have some cult followings, but they're not the most beloved films. Like, if that was the original Jaws, I would hope that they would go in there and go to any means necessary to make sure that 4K Blu-ray, that new scan, looked as good as it could possibly look. But, this is Jaws 3. This is the one that takes place in SeaWorld. It has a bit of a cult following, so if they felt like they wanted to give you the best 4K Blu-ray possible, and AI was there, and that was the only way they could actually fix it, because they didn't use it on the Jaws the Revenge, then at least, they were saying, hey, we're only using it here because it's the only way that we're going to finally clean this up, then I can at least respect that and understand that and hope it doesn't become the norm. That's what I'm always afraid of in this situation. So it's kind of hard for me to pick a side. I just kind of want to see where they go from here. Obviously, this was a big issue earlier in the year with the James Cameron 4K Blu-rays. That has just popped up again here with Jaws 3 on 4K Blu-ray, because it kind of affects like the face in the background. That's always a tell of them using AIs. Like, would faces just look all weird and warped? And there's a couple shots in Jaws 3 or Jaws 3D where, that looks like a pretty ugly looking face, and you can't really argue that AI wasn't used. So that's the whole thing. And, like I said, I just want to see where we go from here. AI is just becoming a bigger and bigger issue. I worry about it every single day because I've seen The Terminator. It's my favorite movie ever. And that's a path we do not want to go down. But unfortunately, I don't think we can turn back. So yeah, I do agree. It's definitely opening up a can of worms. But as far as the results go for Jaws 3, it's tough to argue. That's the hardest thing about that review. I would have to say that the Jaws 3 and Jaws the Revenge reviews were some of the hardest for me to do, just because it just kind of goes into like your own personal morals, and that always makes it really hard when you're looking at something and you're just trying to judge it for what it is. So yeah, that's a great question, buddy. Thank you so much. I hope I answered it to the best of my ability. I appreciate that. Thank you, man. And the next question is from our channel director, Mr. Smelly Potato, and he said, since Deadpool and Wolverine is coming out this week, what are your favorite and least favorite Marvel movies? Any of them, including non-MCUs? And then he asks a second question. When you watch a movie in the theater, where do you like to sit? Up close, middle, or back? Well, I'll answer the second question first, because when I go to a movie theater, I usually sit... the furthest back I'll go is the middle, but I'll never sit in the front. So I'd say more the middle, but I won't go back further than the middle, mainly because you guys probably have heard me talk about it before. I don't have the greatest eyes in the world, so I can't sit all the way in the back and see everything clearly, so I have to sit kind of more in the middle, so it kind of becomes like a visual thing, which, sometimes that creates a little bit of an issue because, I can only sit in certain seats, so I have pretty much half the theater kind of just turned off from me, so a little disappointing in that sense. But either way, I've never really run into an issue nowadays because, we have assigned seating. Back in the day when you had to pick your own seat, sometimes I'd be forced to struggle. This, for instance, a good example is the first time I ever saw The Hangover. We were way in the back of a big theater, and honestly, we didn't really hear it that well either because everyone was laughing so hard, so I had to see The Hangover again anyway, so it was no harm, no foul, but I could distinctly remember struggling from the last row of The Hangover and seeing the front of the theater. So yeah, for me, I'm a middle guy. And then to answer your other question, what are my favorite MCU movies? Well, my favorite MCU movie of all time is still Thor Ragnarok. I thought that was like the pinnacle of the MCU. Taika Waititi was great, or Taika Waititi. I know I'm pronouncing his name wrong. I always do. Just certain names you'll never get, but that was perfect for the Thor character. I thought the first two Thor movies had varying results. I liked the first Thor movie. It's not the greatest in the MCU. It does feel like an MCU Phase 1 movie where they're all right. Iron Man really stands out in the first phase of Marvel, because even Iron Man 2 isn't that great. The Incredible Hulk isn't that great. Thor is, at least, it's an average movie. Actually, the first Avengers is really good. But then, you kind of get a little further along, and Thor, Chris Hemsworth, perfect as Thor, and unlocking the comedy was just the right path for this character. He is a funny guy naturally. We've seen this in plenty of other performances, but bringing that to the Thor character and having this movie be an action comedy, it just worked perfectly, and that's why Thor Ragnarok is my favorite in the MCU. Jeff Goldblum is great. We get the Hulk in this movie. All that stuff works so well. They just took the comedy a little too far when we get to Thor Love and Thunder. That's the whole thing. You had the perfect balance with Thor Ragnarok. I get doubling down on what works, but you had to show, again, the word restraint, and they just didn't with Thor Love and Thunder. And I like Thor Love and Thunder. I don't think it's a bad MCU movie. I actually think there's only been a few bad MCU movies, that being Eternals, the most recent Ant-Man, Quantumania. Unfortunately, that movie's just going to get completely ignored, so it just gets worse as time has gone on. Just bad CGI. And I know I don't want to blame the visual effects department because they're overworked, but still, that movie is just ugly to look at. And then Thor 2. I think Thor 2 is one of the worst movies in the MCU. It's just, but you know what? It actually has a little bit more value now, because when we get to another one of my favorite movies in the MCU, Avengers Endgame, I would actually say Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. Those would be my 2, 3. I'd probably put Infinity War just a little bit above Endgame, but it's really tough to say. Infinity War is just such a perfect movie, and the Russo brothers did such a good job with both of these movies. It's the perfect conclusion to the MCU, and I think a lot of us agree that maybe that's where it should have ended, but you can't really go that route. I haven't seen Deadpool and Wolverine as of right now. I mean, at the time you guys watched this movie, I would have, this video, I would have seen it. You'll see that in the Let's Talk review show this week for sure. When it comes to, like, those Avengers movies, they just ended it so perfectly for all those characters that we came up with. Obviously, it's a money machine. We don't want that to stop. I, myself, don't want that to stop. I like the path that they're going. Deadpool and Wolverine really does feel like an event. And that's what a lot of people, including myself, have complained about when you talk about the MCU, is that they just kind of, they watered it down, just like they did with Star Wars. You put too much stuff on Disney Plus. I get you gotta sell Disney Plus, but still, you're watering down something that felt special. 1 or 2, maybe 3 MCU movies a year. You build up that anticipation, and then you just had to be there opening weekend so you don't get it spoiled for you, because the quality was so good. And we just saw a quality dip. It happens. I hope that Marvel gets it back on the right path, but those 2 movies were so fantastic that it really was the perfect series finale in the world of film, and it's just hard to argue again with those results. I love those movies. And then, of course, I also really love the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I love all 3 of them. If I was going to pick a favorite, I really think 3 might be my favorite now, but it's always hard to pick against the original, because that's the first time you saw those characters on the big screen. And if people remember back when Guardians of the Galaxy came out, like, that was a huge gamble for everybody, including Marvel, because nobody thought that this group of people, I mean, one of them was a talking tree and a talking raccoon. How are we going to sell this? If we can sell this, we could sell anything. And I think that's where Marvel kind of got its arrogance, because they're like, we sold the Guardians of the Galaxy with the trauma guy, James Gunn, and look at that franchise now. And then they felt like they could just do that with every superhero. But you got to remember the quality of the film, and James Gunn had a vision for this. That's why James Gunn is a great director, and he's the perfect guy to head up the new DCEU, or whatever the hell they're calling it now. I can't remember. But either way, he's the perfect guy for it, and I love those Guardians movies. And then, of course, some honorable mentions to the original Iron Man. That's a great movie. I'm not a big fan of the original Avengers movies. Age of Ultron is fine, but they are nothing compared to, Endgame and Infinity War. So that was a great question, Mr. Smelly Potato. Thank you so much. And then Kevin Kruger last week asked me what my top 10 least favorite movies are of all time. Now, this is very opinionated. And to quote Simon from What Culture, I'm a bit of a positive Pete, so if you guys have watched any of my reviews, I love movies so much, and it's very hard for me to always find a movie to be just absolutely atrocious. Like, there's lists of movies out there you can watch that a movie is so bad that they're good. So you won't see on my personal list movies like Trolls 2, which I finally watched for the first time. Thanks for Frank from Frank's Medium Reviews. Or even movies like The Room. The Room is it's just a great time. It's a blast. It's a terrible movie, but you enjoy yourself watching it. So you won't see something like that here on the list. Even some 80s slashers that are definitely bad movies, but I have a fucking great time watching them. So, those movies won't make this list, but either way, some of these movies are just, you'll see, like, some of it's very opinionated. Maybe these could get better for me. Like, right now, the first one I'll come out of the gate with, like, this isn't going to be in any particular order, because I don't know how you would, it's hard to rank the top 10 worst. Like, which one do I hate more than the other? I don't really have any plans to revisit any of these except for a couple. So there's two on here I think I will revisit in the future. And the first one is Spider-Man 3. Now, I know a lot of people love the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans. I loved the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans 1 and 2. I saw both of them in theaters, the opening weekends that they came out. I remember seeing Spider-Man 2 down in Florida. We were there at my grandparents. We went and saw it in just one of those theaters that just has one theater. Like, it really felt like an old theater where that's it. You went through the front doors, there's the lobby, and then there's the one theater, and they were just showing Spider-Man 2. I had a blast. Spider-Man 3 was coming out. The completion of the Tobey Maguire Sam Raimi trilogy. I mean, we're gonna get Venom. I like Topher Grace. I'm a fan of that 70s show. I didn't really buy into it before the movie anyway, but still I was like, hey, they were 2 for 2, and the movie was sold out. This was back where you had to buy tickets when you got to the theater, and it was sold out, and we were really disappointed, and unfortunately, we were like, what are we going to do? Well, we were already there. We didn't drive at the time. We were still pretty young. Actually, I think my cousin Matt had gotten his permit, but either way, we weren't driving yet, so we went in the theater, and we were like, we want to see Spider-Man. So we bought tickets to something else, and we sat on the floor for Spider-Man 3, and my God, I was so disappointed by that movie. When he started dancing, it's very cliche now, and people are like, you over-exaggerated. I can still remember how I felt in that theater. I was like, what is this? Like, this isn't Spider-Man 3, and it just felt like it was too crammed into that movie, and it was too dense. And to this very day, whenever Spider-Man 3 came out, that opening weekend, that was the last time I saw a Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie. I have never gone back. That movie completely turned me off of pretty much any of those movies, and it's unfortunate because I did really love the first 2 Spider-Man movies. Never was sold really on Tobey Maguire. He was never really one of my actors, and he's fine, but the movies themselves are still pretty good. They're very much of their time, though, but still very good movies. I was there. Spider-Man 3, and that's the only reason why that makes this list. I still think that it's a movie eventually I will revisit. And speaking of another superhero movie, this one I just think is absolutely atrocious. This came out 2 years ago. This is one of the Sony Marvel movies, Morbius. And Morbius is just absolutely horrible. I hate Morbius. Morbius is just one of those terrible movies. Jared Leto was I guess, good. I don't know. The only good part about Morbius were the opening and closing credits. They used pinks and blues, and I just love that. Number 3, Transformers Dark of the Moon. This was the third in the Shia LaBeouf, Michael Bay Transformers movies. I liked the first one, the '07 Transformers movie, but that was it. Every one of them, the 2 Mark Wahlberg ones, the other 2 Shia LaBeouf ones. Bumblebee was pretty good, but that doesn't really count in this ridiculous timeline. But the third one, that one was just absolutely horrible. The second one's pretty damn bad too, and I saw that movie twice in theaters, but the third one was even worse somehow. Number 4, we talked about this a little bit earlier, Exorcist 2, The Heretic, the follow-up to one of the greatest horror movies of all time, and you put out a snooze fest. I just cannot believe that movie is that bad and that boring. Number 5, I remember seeing this movie in theaters. I probably liked it at the time, but I had revisited it a couple times since, because other people are watching it. You show it to kids, and that movie Baby Geniuses, basically where we dub voices and, use CGI to make the babies' mouths move like they're actually geniuses. They can talk to each other, but, the parents still can't understand them. Oh my God, this movie was stupid. And believe it or not, it's got 2 sequels. I know I saw Baby Geniuses 2. I didn't even know until I looked up Baby Geniuses when it came out to know that Baby Geniuses 3 does exist somehow. Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. It's the only Star Wars movie I don't own. And that's because it's a really bad movie. It just literally feels like like fan service for the sake of fan service to try and undo what we did in The Last Jedi. That's what makes this trilogy so bad, is that you had no plan for it. You know, you gave 3 directors their own movies, and yet they're supposed to tie into each other. So we made the first one. I love The Force Awakens. It's one of my favorite Star Wars movies of all time. It's in my top 3. But then you go to The Last Jedi, which like pretty much tries to undo everything we set up in The Force Awakens. You know, him tossing the lightsaber over his shoulder, trying to make Daisy Ridley's Rey, you know, have no parents of significance. So then when we get to The Rise of Skywalker, okay, maybe those ideas, you know, fans resisted them, but some of them didn't. Instead of trying to commit to that, you try and undo everything you did in The Last Jedi. We go with the Star Wars cliche where, you know, Kylo Ren has to redeem himself, even though, oh, he's the guy who killed one of the greatest characters in film history, Han Solo. Given it's his father, but he killed his father, but we gotta redeem him in the rain. Oh my god. And then the biggest sin of this movie, bringing back the Emperor just to bring back a villain that everybody knows. You wanted to sell tickets, you wanted to make everybody happy, and by doing that, you made one of the worst movies ever. Number 6, Jack and Jill. This is the Adam Sandler movie that Al Pacino has had pretty recently, almost ruined his career. Al Pacino's made some other bad decisions besides Jack and Jill, especially late in his career, but still, Al Pacino's one of the greatest actors of all time, and it's still wild to me that he was in this movie talking about a Dunkachino.
Well, I know it was you. Everyone wants my Dunkachino. Can't get enough of my Dunkachino.
But this is the movie where Adam Sandler plays twins, Jack and Jill. It's just a bad movie, and I'm not one of those Adam Sandler haters. I actually love Adam Sandler. He's made some of my favorite comedies of all time. I think he's a genuinely great guy, but Jack and Jill was just a bad movie overall. Number 7 or 8, this one is The Flintstones. Viva Rock Vegas. This was actually the prequel to the 1994 film, which actually starred John Goodman as Fred Flintstone. Rick Moranis was in it. Rosie O'Donnell was in that one. I love that movie as a kid. Obviously, it came out in my childhood. Couldn't wait to see the second one. This was a prequel, and it's even a prequel to the series. Like, it's showing how Wilma and Fred met, you know, basically an origin story. And the movie recasts everybody, even though it's got the same directors, and it's probably because it didn't have the Steven Spielberg backing of the first one. But either way, this movie, it's just a huge disappointment. It really let me down. Again, on this list, another movie I have is Paulie from 1998. This is a movie with a talking parrot. I saw this at a young age, and even then I didn't really like this movie. I have a distinct memory of seeing it, though, which is really funny. And the last one on this list is Halloween Ends, and this was the end of the trilogy of the more recent David Gordon Green, Danny McBride written trilogy of Halloween movies, and I thought Halloween 2018 was great. One of the better Halloween movies. Halloween Kills was a good follow-up, a great time, a fun time, just watching Michael do his thing, and we thought we were getting the war between Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode and Mike Myers. But of course, we ended up with, what's his name? Corey Cunningham. And this movie just made a hard left turn from what we were expecting. Yes, we did get that big face-off that they were building up to, but it just was a huge letdown overall. The disappointment in this movie, I mean, we made Michael a father figure in this movie, really taking Corey under his wing and showing him how to kill. He's got his own mask. I mean, I remember thinking, this is fucking ridiculous. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that this was the movie that they put out. This is the same team that put out The Exorcist Believer last year, so they're on a really downward trajectory right now. They actually had to bring in, I think it was Mike Flanagan, or at least they replaced David Gordon Green for the second Exorcist movie because they spent a lot of money to get the rights to it. But either way, what a letdown Halloween Ends was, my God. And then the next question is from our buddy 021OM6, and he said, over the years of collecting 4K physical media, I'm sure you have made mistakes along the way that you look back and say, oh man, I wish I did that, and I did that. For those new collectors out there, what would be your top tips to avoid when starting a collection? And I remember starting my collection back in 2017, and I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. The only reason I even started collecting 4K Blu-rays, I was collecting Blu-rays, and I didn't care about the quality or anything at the time. In 2017, you know, I was moving into my house. I was going to upgrade my TV. At the time, I just had a Vizio. I just had a Vizio TV. It was like 60 inches, you know, one of those TVs that are pretty cheap to get. But I wanted to, you know, upgrade my TV, get a 4K Blu-ray player, because I was still collecting Blu-rays, but I didn't really care necessarily about the quality of them. So I bought an Xbox. I can't remember what it was. Was it an Xbox Series X? One of the first ones with a 4K player in it. I think it was the Xbox One X, if I'm correct. So I had a 4K Blu-ray player in it. Got my first 4K Blu-rays. One of those was Unforgiven on 4K Blu-ray. And you know what? I was sold on the format, but I was just buying 4K Blu-rays. Given it was early in the 4K format, 2017 was the second year of a 4K Blu-ray, so we weren't getting too many. That's actually why I have so many 4K Blu-rays, because in the beginning, I was just buying them all. And we were only getting like 1 or 2 a week at the early stages of 4K Blu-ray, so it wasn't like how it is now where we get so many each week where it's hard to keep up. So I was getting them, but I wasn't really paying attention to the quality. I didn't have the best sound system yet. It really wasn't until like 2019 that I really started paying attention to the actual audio, the visuals, HDR, and all that stuff that actually came along with the 4K format, and truly understanding what the format was. It wasn't just buying movies anymore. Like now when I buy a movie, it's a little bit different. Like I don't want to just have the movie. I want to make sure it's a good quality disc. Obviously if I want the movie, I'm going to get the movie, but the disc itself, I study the quality of the disc now. That's what I do here. I review them, but I wasn't doing that in the very beginning, and I would say that's the biggest tip I can give to you guys is pay attention to the quality. Not every 4K disc is created equal. So when you go out there and you're looking at it, once I discovered reviews and everything like that, it really was helpful to me. But of course, every beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and being a reviewer myself now, I understand that there's also differing of opinions, but you do want to know what's on the disc, what visuals, what audio, because I think that means a lot more today than it did on like the DVD format or even on the VHS format. Now, obviously, there were people around back then collecting Laserdiscs that were paying attention to the quality, but I don't think it was until the early days of like the 4K Blu-ray format that I finally started paying attention to the quality and not just trying to have as many movies as possible. Like, I didn't have to have the world's biggest collection, but I wanted to make sure I understood what was on each disc, and I made sure that the TV that I had was good, the audio system that I had was good, to really get the full features of what the 4K Blu-ray format is. And I really think that's another thing that people need to understand too. And it's it ties a lot into how I review movies here on the channel, is everybody's got a different system. And, some people might just be watching 4K Blu-rays on like a PS5 or even a PS4, have just a regular, one of those doorbuster TVs that they release every single, Black Friday, where it's like a $300 TV with 70 inches. And, you have to know that's not the greatest quality 4K Blu-ray TV. That's no OLED. So everyone's got a different TV that they're using. But I would say, the better TV you have to make sure that it has HDR and Dolby Vision. Make sure they're compatible. Make sure that your 4K Blu-ray player is compatible with both Dolby Vision and HDR. Make sure that your sound system supports Dolby Audio, DTS. That stuff is all very important if you're going to get the full features of your 4K Blu-ray. If you want to use that to the highest possible quality, you're going to want to have the best quality TV, 4K player. That's all stuff we try and give to you guys here on the channel to help you guys understand. There are reviews for the 4K players that we use. I don't think we ever reviewed the TVs. There's some great reviewers out there of TVs that really could help you out. But I always say go OLED if you can. But, try and understand the format completely. Try and understand what is on those discs. Understand the boutique labels. Understand, like, certain labels put out certain movies. Try and just completely understand what you're buying. Like, I know that it's going to be tough. Like, you're walking down the aisle and you're going to see a 4K Blu-ray for, like, $4.99. I mean, this isn't going to happen anymore because we don't really sell movies in the store anymore. But, some of them are out there. But, even online, you might see a disc for, like, $4.99. You got to question, why is it that cheap? And why do certain labels and certain 4K Blu-rays never drop in price? That's always something that I never really understood. I didn't care if a movie, like I showed you guys my Trick or Treat earlier in this. That's because Trick or Treat, I didn't care about the fact that there was a Scream Factory release. I was like, this one's cheaper. I didn't care that what the difference in the color timing was, what the difference in the audio was. That's part of collecting. And as you get into collecting, you really need to understand what you're buying. Understand the labels, understand the audio, and make sure that your system is capable of actually getting the full features of your 4K Blu-ray. So that's really my best recommendations. And that was a great question, 021OM6. Thank you so much. And I always appreciate your thought-provoking questions, man. It really does mean a lot. Thank you so much. And we have 2 more questions, and they, like I was saying last week, Sprazy110, he'll send in the quick questions. We get a couple out of them, we bang them out. So he sent in 2 this week, and he said, were you a Blockbuster or Hollywood video guy? Well, I was more of a Blockbuster guy, but we had both of them, and we did go to both. I remember distinctly renting Super Nintendo games from Hollywood Video because they had Super Nintendo games. Meanwhile, our Blockbuster didn't, so we would go there for Super Nintendo games, and then we don't go to Blockbuster usually for the movies. But I was always more of a Blockbuster guy, and I always hear people like saying like, you know, like they were the corporate video stores, and they were. And there was a local video store that I used to rent from called Video City, and actually me and my cousin Matt, we used to ride our bikes there all the time. And the guy would give us the movie posters, you know, after they swapped them out for whatever new movies were coming out. He would just give us the old ones, and I had so many classic movie posters on my wall. I wish I would have hung on to them. Again, too young to understand what I had, because I had some great movie posters, full-size movie posters that, you know, might have been worth some money today. But again, I was a young kid. I was an idiot. What do I know? But yeah, more of a Blockbuster guy. And speaking of Matt, this is a funny one because he wrote, is it unethical, not Matt, Sprazy110 wrote, is it unethical to buy a movie, keep the slipcase, return the movie, and to buy it again when it goes on sale? My cousin Matt has done this numerous times. Now, I always feel guilty doing this because you're ripping off the next guy who buys that. But, you know, I do know people who do that, and I respect it. It's really up to you. I personally, I'm not a big guy who cares about... The only time I ever cared about not getting the slipcover was for The Fugitive, because I pre-ordered the movie, and I felt like I should have got the slipcover. But at the end of the day, like we started the show off talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street, it's about the disc inside of it, so I don't really get too I get a little disappointed. Like, I remember Man of Steel didn't come with a slipcover. I kind of would have wanted it, but it's not make or break for me. The disc is make or break. If the quality of the disc is bad, then that's the worst part of it. But if, you know, I don't get a slipcover, it's not gonna hurt me. So it's not I mean, it's kind of unethical, but, you know, it's gonna really come down to you and how you feel about it. Like, I've seen other people do it. I'm not gonna stop anyone from doing it. It really comes down to what you want to do. You know, I'm not out here trying to be the police. You know, it's a slipcover. Some people love them. Some people don't care. If you love them, yeah, I guess do whatever you can to get them, man. I appreciate that. I can respect that. You know, obviously, I'm not going to do that, but that's just really because I don't really care too much, I guess is the best way to put it. It's just, like I said, it's just about the disc for me. But that was still a great question, Sprazy110. Thank you for always sending in questions. Thank you to Kevin. Thank you to everybody who sent in questions this week. Mr. Smelly Potato 0210M6. I appreciate them all. And thank you to everybody for checking out this video. All I hope is that you guys enjoyed this video, liked this video, shared this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. We also have channel memberships where you can become a friend of the channel, a producer, or a channel director like Mr. Smelly Potato and Frank from Free Yanks Media and Reviews. Our producers are John Doe Juggalo and Jason Martin. So guys, even if you got no money to throw away, all we really hope is that you enjoyed this video. And if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.